Hi, this is Bob Scully, and welcome to another edition of the World Show, the Entrepreneur Series, where we're going to talk about entrepreneurship and smart investing from somebody who's been called Canada's Warren Buffett, John Dobson, who is the founder of the Formula Growth Fund.
Correct.
And the Dobson Foundation and the Dobson Center for Entrepreneurship at McGill University. Welcome.
Thank you. Nice to be here with you.
And others would say you're a dead ringer for Tip O'Neill with that great, with the voice and the face and the hair. But all in all, you have drawn a very nice straight line over the years, like Buffett. You started something in 1960, and somebody who would have bought a unit in the Formula Growth Fund in 1960 would have paid $9. And today they'd be sitting on $3,600. So that's 400 times
46
over.
years.
Wow. And you did it through a strategy which is what they call growth companies, small companies, mainly U.S. companies. I mean, that was your...
Yeah, what we're really trying to do, and where we think you make money, which is out of vogue today, is to try to take companies where the earnings and the sales and the companies are truly growing and stick with them for a period of time, as opposed to looking for dividends and returns and yield, which is the current fad now. The United States, we get to that because we started as a bunch of Canadians. It's easiest to understand us by an overgrown investment club, who got together and said, look, there are places in the world other than Canada. Because after the war, in the early 50s when I came out of Harvard, people invested around the world in Brazil and Canada. They were the two hot countries. So near the end of the 50s, it looked a little different. And the question was, shouldn't we Canadians invest in other places like Europe? And we had cronies in there. So we said, we'll put this pool together. We'll go around Montreal, find out anybody we can who knows something about European or foreign investment. And that's how we started. And as such, we didn't have any Canadian companies. It was out of bounds. Nothing wrong with the Canadian companies. The Canadians could find their own. They didn't know anything about this. And this was a special thing, investing outside the country. One time we had a third in Europe. Another time we had a third in Japan. And for the last X number of years, we're almost 100% in the United States for two reasons. You can't be really good at these things if you're covering the whole world. And the United States, the innovation and the change and the opportunities are so great there. So for those reasons, we've concentrated on the United States.
And it's not near to being exhausted. I mean, it generates those kind of companies that you're looking for.
It has. We're having a little trouble, more trouble these days, as there seem to be a few wars around the world, and the politicians don't seem to like things, and the business leaders seem to be greedy and taking too much, so the climate recently is not particularly favorable. Now, this has happened many, many times before. My favorite sentence on this is Peter Lynch, who I regard as perhaps the best investor in our lifetime. He was in Fidelity. Peter had the #1 record for 13 years, and 9 times his fund went down 20% in those 13 years. So somebody says, we can't have something that goes up and down. I mean, it's not supposed to happen. Well, they don't know the real world. The question is whether you want to make money or whether you want to compare against a bogey. And the modern CFAs and everybody have got everybody thinking a bogey. Your bogey might be Standard & Poor's, it might be the Russell. If you do 5% better or worse, it's great, even if you lost money.
But they're bean counters if they're thinking like that.
No, but this is the way most people are thinking, and they're very short term. And in the bigger league, on the American system, they have these conference calls every quarter. And they maybe get, I don't know, let's say 15 analysts phoning in, talking to the chief executive officer. I listen to some of them and get some tapes on them. And really what they're trying to do is to figure out what the hell is going to happen in the next quarter. Is he going to be up a little more than you think, or down a little more than you think? Now, some of the guys, were Whole Foods last week was speaking, and the guy said after, look, I'll tell you what I'm going to do in 4 years. I'm going to have this number of stores in Whole Foods, and have this, that, and the other thing. No, they want to try and figure it out.
In the next 3 months?
In the next 3 months.
Which is an impossibility.
Well, yeah, it is, other than if you jig the numbers.
And you, at any given time, you're sitting on about 150 to 200 stocks.
Yeah.
And is that like a natural, is that a limit in the market or the limit of what you want to follow?
No, it's really a limit of what we follow. We have 5 people who might pick stocks. So it isn't quite, if you go through 5 people, and we have a network across the states, and we travel to all these meetings. That's not the problem. We don't want to put more, let's say 7% in any one stock. I mean, we're going to put a ceiling on it. So it's our rule. We could have 300 or we could have 80. And the wise guys say, well, why don't you give me only 80? Give me the 80 best. The problem is we don't know what the 80 best are. And we never have.
And typically how long before you exit? Maybe you don't exit. Maybe you kept some of them
3 years, roughly.
Do you keep some of them 10 years, 20 years?
Oh, yeah, we have a few that have been that way. And then they may get into something else, We have AIG, a big insurance company in the States. We had it because it was in a smaller insurance company. They were bought out. And so they bought one. We looked at AIG, and it seemed to be too cheap and all the rest of it.
swapped.
So we kept it. Yeah, it was to share exchange. So we might have something like that. Sometimes get bought out. Hospital Corp, for instance, tonight or last week announced that they're going to be taken private. One of the new items now is to take companies private. Well, why take hospital company private? It's one of the finest hospitals companies in the States. It led the industry. We know them well. They did it 3 years ago. The private pools of equity, dominated by the big boys, have got so much money, they come along and try to figure anything that has a reasonable value. Then they take it private. They sometimes take pretty nice fees along the way. In their language, they clean it up, whether they do something or not, I don't know. And about 4 or 5 years later, it goes back in the market.